making their way to the studio. The reason there's now a no heckling sign at St. Patrick's Cathedral, it's the Unholy Roundtable.
Hey there, welcome to Atheistville. My name is Mike, and tonight is a special kind of show. This is the Unholy Roundtable, where we bring people together, various atheists from various walks of life and backgrounds, and address your question. So right now, if you have any questions, get them loaded into YouTube, and we will try to get to all of them. We also have some questions that people gave us earlier that we're going to address, and I collected these people, kind of a rogue band of misfits and miscreants, to address them from different perspectives. As I've said from the beginning of this show, I want people from different backgrounds because I only have my own experience. I don't know their experience. So their perspectives may be the same, maybe completely different. We can disagree. We're all friends. That's fine if we disagree. Nobody cares. Just disagree. So those of you who are on the call, Mike, Scott, Annette, Larry, feel free to say, it's not what I think, and go a different direction on it. So with that, real quick, I'll give each of you like a 5 or 10 seconds just to say hello and your name and anything else, but just real brief so we can let people know. I'll start with Mike, just because he's the first one on my screen.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Thanks for having me on again, Mike. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's going to be nice to be able to talk with Scott and Annette and Larry, and again you. So, looking forward to it.
Welcome.
Yeah, hi, I'm Scott. I'm really glad to be back on here. It's great to talk about like-minded people and to get points of view that we may not understand because of our gender, sexuality, gender identity, background in church, or even different religions. So it's really cool that we're getting heathens from different walks of life all here to heathenize together.
That's funny.
It's a thing. I'm claiming it.
Yeah, why not? Larry or Annette, whichever one.
Ladies first.
Oh, thank you, Larry. Annette, and I'm a recovering Christian. Maybe I should say that I identify that way. And I'm happy to be here. Apparently I'm representing all of the female race here.
All of 15, 4 billion women in the world. That's all you.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. And Larry, we'll wrap up with you.
The thing that I appreciate about what you're doing here, Mike, is we're creating a record. It's another little small bit of information for the internet. People can come by here at any time in the future and perhaps get a perspective of what atheists really are and the genuine thoughts that we have and how we live much happier and less stressed lives than most religious people. Also, I think we identify as not a rogue group, but more of a, I don't know,
a motley crew.
Motley crew, maybe that's
motley
it.
Motley crew, I love it.
But you just said something. It's a good point, Larry, and I did want to kind of add that on. And that was another thought when I first came up with the idea of these shows in general, was that we're all out there. We live next door to you. We work next to you. We ride the bus or the train, or we're kids soccer coach, or any of these other things. And people have an idea. Scott and I specifically, we both grew up in the South. And there's very strong opinions. I'm sure there's strong opinions everywhere, but in the South, it's very guns and Jesus kind of a place. And if you say you're an atheist, there's a baggage that goes along with it. It's not true, but it's there nonetheless. And we have to battle that. So the idea was I'll bring people like you guys on and other guests that I've had on that we'll bring on in future shows, just to give an idea that we're just like everybody else. Like we got kids, we got parents, we got jobs, everything else. We're just trying to get through life. We just have a little different perspective on it, but we still all want the same basic things in life, which is just to get to the finish line as relatively unscathed as possible, right? So with that, let's go with a hot take right out of the gate.
Nice.
So this came up. You've probably all seen this on the news, and this is going to be a video clip. But this rise of Christian nationalism that we've seen, I've actually done a future video that I've already got sort of in the can, where, and I think you probably have all heard this, over the last several years, church attendance has gone down. the nuns, meaning the non-affiliation, which is atheists, agnostics, and people just don't say I'm part of any religion, has been the fastest growing group of Americans. At the same time, Christian nationalism is rampant, right? So it's a very strange sort of world we're living in right now. But I'm going to go ahead and throw this video up from the other day. This is a CNN video of a guy named Doug Wilson. And let's just watch that and we'll comment on the other side.
Suck. As a parent who lost...
Probably help if I do the right video.
Doug Wilson makes no apologies for his beliefs on God and country.
I'd like to see the town be a Christian town. I'd like to see the state be a Christian state. I'd like to see the nation be a Christian nation. I'd like to see the world be a Christian world.
And now Wilson's controversial views as a Christian nationalist are gaining sway in the nation's center of power with the recent opening of his new church and high-profile parishioners like Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
Is planting a church in D.C. part of your mission to try to turn this into a Christian nation?
Yes. So every society is theocratic. The only question is who's theo. In a secular democracy, it would be demos, the people. In a Christian republic, it'd be Christ.
So there we go. I've got my thoughts, but let's start with any of you want to jump out on this one. This is an open question for the entire group because this is it's a little crazy.
But the first thing that struck me when I saw that earlier was that he said he'd like to see it be a Christian nation, which is counter to a lot of the people I've heard before, all the Christian nationalists saying we are a Christian nation.
True.
They're wrong, but he's essentially admitting that they know that we aren't.
That's a good point, actually, because you're right. The average Christian nationalist would say we're founded as a Christian, which is always bullshit, but that's what they say. You're right. Anybody else?
And if you consider that the country was originally founded because, or one of the driving factors, or something that I should say that was very important, was that all religions had an opportunity. There wasn't anything that was, you weren't demanded by the king, to be any particular religion.
Right. That was our whole point. Right.
But in the other side to that is, though, that there have been laws, like in some states, you couldn't hold public office without being a Christian. That's, since the Constitution was even formed. And of course, the First Amendment was what they used to bat those laws down eventually.
Are all controversial when JFK ran for president because he was Catholic,
first Catholic.
But I think what I've noticed is that there's been this trend, despite church, attendance going down, in-person attendance is going down at everything, right? Across the board, not just church. People are, just not showing up as much to things in person. But what we see globally happening is this kind of lean toward nationalism and more extremism. We're seeing this across the globe. And so my worldview kind of comes from this perspective that it's, religion is all part of this machine that's tied to patriarchy and tied to white supremacy and tied to trying to control other people. And so when I hear people say, I want this to be a Christian nation, I also hear kind of behind that this desire to want to sort of legislate people's morality and their behavior. It's an attempt to control people and determine what, the norms and the expectations across society are. This is I believe that the lean toward nationalism is also like this rebound where this is our punishment for Obama, right? It's like the punishment for this, like marriage equality and, all of these trends that have been trending more in that, kind of leaning more liberal and now we're seeing a rebound from that.
It's the pendulum swinging back.
The pendulum swinging back. Does it worry you about how far it's going to go? Or do you think we're towards the end of that pendulum? Where are you guys? And Larry, since you were starting, I cut you off. Yeah. We'll start with you. Where do you think about where we're at in that phase?
I'm more concerned now than I was before the overturn of Roe.
Good.
Because I believe I mentioned in my episode before, you see them chipping away. School vouchers is another little insidious way to accomplish the overall goal that is becoming more and more apparent in my view. One other thing that I believe the other Mike mentioned about the founding of the country, I kind of take the idea that the country was founded by various sects and religions. Each colony kind of had their own religious start. In other words, the Protestants of one flavor were in one colony, and a different colony had primarily something else. And I think there's an idea that we were taught in school, especially me, because I believe I'm about the oldest here. In grade school, we were taught that the people on Mayflower came over to escape religious persecution, which is a good story and somewhat true. But I think more precisely, perhaps they and the other colonials came over to not just escape religious persecution, but to be able to persecute others,
to rape and pillage
in their own religious way. Yeah. So
I see exactly what you're saying. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, they kind of wanted to seat at the table, and they didn't have one there. So they came over here where they could take over.
The freedom to worship, as I believe, means that I can't abide by some of the things that these other sects do.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I think when people talk about, the Pilgrims on the Mayflower, they left England and came to the United States to escape religious persecution. What people don't realize is there was a gap of over 10 years, I think, when they were in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Because they were away from religious persecution. And not only was that persecution creeping back up on them, but their own kids were becoming less Christian and more secular. And the reason that they did end up coming to the United States was not for religious purposes. It was because they had an opportunity to work for a company and be paid to go to the New World. It was about leaving England. Yes, that was about religious persecution, but coming to here wasn't as much about religious persecution as people like to pretend it is.
I just fairly recently, within the last few years, heard that whole 10-year thing, and you're right, it was the Netherlands. I'm pretty sure it was the Netherlands, just like you think. And I, as a kid, and Larry and I, you and I are a little off on it. We're probably the two oldest, and we're not too terribly far off from each other. I definitely never heard that. I mean, well, again, I only heard this a few years ago, so I definitely was never. That is not the story we tell from Americans.
Yeah, it's like they say in England.
Yeah. Yeah, we just fled the church and we fled the king, and so we could set up shop here and do what we want, but not really. That, as everything we do in America, there's always a little extra story that we kind of leave out, right? Kind of like the Bible. Yeah. We don't tell all the books right away. There's a lot of stories.
Well, I just want to know, in that last video, I don't know if you can replay it, but did my eyes deceive me, or was he wearing mixed fabrics? This is the problem that I've got is people are throwing around Christian nationalism, and it's like, which version of Christianity?
Wow.
There's over 10,000 different things, different denominations. So which way would you go anyway? I mean, they tried to narrow it down in Arkansas. Was it Arkansas or Oklahoma where they had to have Bibles in the classroom? And when they finally got it narrowed down exactly what they had to have out of those Bibles, it was the Trump Bible.
The Trump Bible.
The Trump Bible was the only one
literally. That was that was the freaking plan. The Trump Bible, and it also didn't have like the Declaration of Independence at the beginning.
Declaration of Independence, which isn't even a legal. That's not even a legal framework of the United States. The Declaration of Independence has nothing to do with our legal system.
It's
just mind numbing.
Declaration of War, right? That's not the Bill of Rights. It's a whole different. I mean, it's an important document for our history, our shared history, but it's not. And again, it's not religious. It's just insane. But yes, it was Oklahoma. And I don't have that clip. Incidentally, that's the guy who just, I think I did a mic drop on the Atheist channel that just got in trouble for watching porn during the school board thing. That's the same guy. The Oklahoma guy. He's in his office. He calls someone back to the office. These two people, also Republicans. He called them back to their office to talk about
educational board members.
Educational board members. He wanted to discuss a point that they didn't want out as far as their normal quorum.
Yeah.
And while they're sitting there, his TV behind him is hooked up his computer. It's got porn on it. And the man and the woman, again, Republicans are like, are those nipples? Am I seeing nipples like damn screen? Scott or whatever the hell his name was, like Jesus.
Well, if you see like and they show maps of like the highest rates of porn usage are also overlap with the parts of the country that are purportedly the highest, rates of religious people too.
Grindr too.
Yes.
Grindr.
Yeah. 100%.
Exactly.
Grindr crashed how many times during the Republican National Convention? And that was right here in Milwaukee.
That was insane. Yeah. All right, let's move on to this one. Hey, I hope you're enjoying today's discussion. Be sure to check out the reading list and resource links we put together in the show notes for this segment. In particular, I'd like to draw your attention to this great book. It's called The Founding Myth by Andrew Seidel. It's a compelling and well-researched examination of the false narrative that America was founded as a Christian nation. Seidel dismantles this myth with historical documents, legal analysis, and constitutional history, showing how the separation of church and state is essential to both freedom and faith. This would be a great follow-up for today's discussion. Check the show notes for links to this and other resources you might find interesting. Now, let's get back to the show. So, Nat, I'm going to give you this one. As you said, you're representing every woman from every walk of life in the entire world. So, no pressure, though. This is a question from Reddit or Facebook. I kind of got questions from everywhere, but this is a good question, I thought. I'm going to read these out loud because when we do the podcast, they won't see them. So this is for Annette. The woman asked, I'm assuming a woman, why should I, as a woman, keep trying to reframe myself into a religion that was never built for me? It's a legitimate question.
It absolutely is. And, I guess I would say my personal story. I grew up Christian, and I started my journey to atheism in college. I would say I took many philosophy classes, and it kind of led me down this wormhole of just really like teaching me how to critically think, honestly.
Yeah.
Which ironically happened at a Catholic university. But I just kept following things to like their logical end. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So I'll just give you one example, which was, the question posed by my professor at the time was, how can the end of the world be determined already, right? Like, God has already said that this is how the world will end. It's spelled out in Revelation. And if that is how it will end, if it's already determined, then how do we also have free will? How can both be true at the same time? And so that was the first real significant kind of crack in my Christian belief. And so it continued from there. And then it, and when I started to realize that, like, I do really have a choice in what religion. I don't have to be the religion that I was born into.
Yeah,
I can decide for myself, like, what do I think happened? And when you start to reflect on that, and as I was also learning more just about feminism in general, I realized that I could find like whatever needs that I got met in Christianity, which for many people like me is, a sense of belonging and community and friends. And, it helps with coping at times when you feel like you have like somebody to talk to all the time. If you're like, I'll just pray, and ask God what for advice or what does he think I should do?
Right.
And so when I realized that I could get all of my needs met better in other places or with other tools, then I started to realize that I didn't need it anymore. So not only did, first step was to, the crack to stop maybe believing or to, start questioning my actual faith.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like this other, like the logical part of it is not also the emotional part of it, right? Like those are separate. And so like the emotional part of like, how do I get my needs met then elsewhere? And I realized like, oh, like I can go to yoga and I can join this group and I can actually like have this group of friends. And, I don't have to have like my entire community just centralized in this. So, and then when I realized that it's not made for women. It's a power structure made for men. It was much easier to leave it behind.
Did you, and this is kind of a group question, and the handful of us are here in Chicago, and we have a regular meetup, it's not as regular as it used to be, but we try to get together. And you hit something in that I did not realize when we first started doing those meetups 10 years ago, and Annette and Larry both were at your very first one that we did 10 years ago. I didn't appreciate how much people missed that community of joining the church. So when we first started these, and even now, I thought of them as a social club that happens to be atheist, right? And I thought, okay, we'll just get together. It's not an agenda. We're not having a meeting. There are no notes to take. It's not a speaker. We're just getting together. We hang out at a bar, restaurant, whatever. What I didn't realize, people would come to the group and they just wanted to get it off their chest and say, I don't understand what I had to go through, and I finally have broken free, and I can't believe I've met all you people that are like-minded, because they used to go to church and that was a social thing, and they don't have that now, and they've been waiting to talk to anybody and to be able to speak freely. And like you said, it might not be any difference between men and women or anything else, but I didn't fully appreciate that because I didn't grow up in that level of socializing within the church. But I thought it was really very interesting once I started to clue in on that, how much people really stay in church very often as much for the social aspect as they do the belief. And Mike, you probably know about that because as involved as you were on the, say, the administrative side of it, if you will, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very difficult to lose that connection with everyone else. There was always someone there. There was always something going on where you were interacting with people. That's really just what it comes down to. And when I stopped attending those things, I never went to. And when I stopped going to Sunday school, or when I stopped going to church, period. Well, then choir was really the only thing that I had left, and I was still going through some things. So that whole process it left a void. There was definitely a void. I had to relearn that, hey, I'm just a mammal running around doing mammal things, and I can do it with all my other mammal buddies. I don't have to have my blinders on.
Yeah. No, I try now when we have these meetings to broach the subject to a level that allows them to know that, hey, it's okay if you want to talk about it. It's okay if you don't. If you just want to have a beer and talk about the last movie we saw, that's fine. That's why we're here. But if they start to go down a road of like, this is what I experienced or whatever, doesn't matter. I'm here to listen to people. I just let them talk. I don't try to dissuade them from it. But it was important for me to learn that. I wish I could say I learned that on the first meeting. I didn't, but nonetheless. All right, let's move on to the next one. Let's see here. Larry, I got a question for you.
Oh, I think Scott's trying to talk, but we can't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to give a very succinct answer to that last question.
Do.
Why should I reframe myself to fit into a religion that doesn't fit XYZ version of myself?
Oh, yeah, that applies.
You shouldn't.
Sure, too. Yeah. Oh, hey.
Period. That's point blank and period. You should not, unless you're going to change an 8,000-year-old God. It's not going to work out for you.
Right.
I wrote that down.
Deal with the same thing.
You shouldn't.
Yep. You
shouldn't.
shouldn't.
It's a good point. It's a good point, and you're
like
absolutely right.
we have to unwire ourselves that way, right? Because like when we're raised in religion, we're taught to do that, right? Like we have to conform to those expectations and whatever, like they become like these cultural norms. And, I think that it is, very common. That's why we see, like the pray the gay away, and like people are more willing to try to twist themselves into something that they're not rather than to lose the community that they have. Yeah. That's what's at risk.
Well, and even the flip side of that is what I call cafeteria Christians who are like, I applaud people for trying to be very LGBTQIA friendly. Read Leviticus 20. The God you are worshiping specifically said queer people should be put to death. You cannot square that circle. Women are property. In the 10 Commandments, when it gives a list of property that you are not to covet, your neighbor's wife is on that list because women are property. You can't square that circle with it as many yet, but Jesus came.
I
Jesus
guess
said a lot of the same things.
I'll add to that question that you just had too. Like, why should I reframe myself? Like, why should I work hard to fit into a structure that like I have to justify my own existence and my own dignity, right? Like I have to, like the fact that I'm fully human that's not part of the building blocks of it. I'm not a cattle.
You have to understand it was built that way for a reason. I remember learning about the Council of Nicaea when they put together the Bible. There was there's the book of Lilith. Now nobody knows about Lilith because Lilith was created the same way Adam was created. And the council said, wait a minute, that would make her as a creation equal to man.
Equal.
We can't have that.
No.
It was Adam's wife.
Be pure chaos.
Yeah, that's not what we want. We don't want women beyond.
She's probably mouthy and everything.
So
Lilith was definitely mouthy. Read more about Lilith.
That book is out.
Be more like Lilith.
We'll bury that. We don't want to talk about that. Yeah. Let's get that Eve in here. She's all compliant and
very submissive
and stuff.
She did go eat that fruit though, so came.
Well, it doesn't matter. She's a part of Adam. She came from Adam, so she's lesser.
We have the eternal punishment because of that. So I feel like I gave birth. I paid my dues.
Right. This is the longest sentence ever. I mean, I could steal all kinds of stuff. I'm out in 6 months, but this thing is ridiculous. So such a silly story, but it's
forever indebted.
And there's no AC.
Yeah, ridiculous. All right, that's good. This one's Larry. I'm gonna read these just again for the podcast later when I do rebroadcast these. What if I'm wrong about deconstructing from Christianity, thinking that whatever reasons I have for leaving are facts, but in reality, it's just the devil trying to trick me into abandoning God? Which is actually, it's not a bad question, because I'm sure any one of us could say, yeah, someone told me that. We're being tricked. We're being pulled. We actually just mentioned the whole Eve thing. I mean, you're being tricked, but to eat the apple. It's this age-old story, right?
What if you're wrong?
Yeah. There's a lot in that question. Boy. What if I'm wrong? What if you're wrong? The old
Pascal's wager.
Same question. Yes. Pascal's wager, as a quote I remember, I think I told earlier was Hitchens said that all religions, they can't all be correct. They can't all be right, but they can all be wrong.
You're wrong.
So, so I mean that's the first part of that question. If I'm wrong, but I've arrived at these facts that I have through genuine research and thinking and sussing out evidence, and it turns out that it's really the devil trying to trick me into abandoning God, and I appear at the pearly gates, And they go, well, the devil tricked you. I said, well, why did you let the devil survive? Aren't you all powerful? Couldn't you have just defeated him and removed that influence from me?
Right.
And I arrived in my non-belief genuinely and
Yeah.
sincerely.
Right.
Whereas someone who is faking it until they make it because they have all the societal pressure to be a Christian or religious or whatever, saying, well, just keep pretending, and eventually you'll believe it, or believe it in your heart, and it'll come true. Well, that seems kind of disingenuous, and wouldn't an all-knowing God know that you were faking it? I mean,
good point. Yes,
I'd rather be genuine and
wrong.
Look for a basis for the facts that I have and the truth that I'm living.
Yeah.
If there's nothing, then
go ahead.
When I started asking my pastor hard questions, he said, "Well, Mike, that's the devil working in you right now. That's why you're asking these questions." So I took that, sat on it, chewed on it for a minute, and I thought to myself, well, this is a little absurd. If all I have ever been doing is doing absolutely everything I possibly can to stay as one with God as possible, then why? There's absurdity there. And it was slowly but surely a number of different absurdities started coming up. And all of a sudden the foundation started to crumble. And thankfully for myself, I was able to make it through. There's others that haven't. So a person, and I think I even talked about this when I was a guest last time, a person has to, at some point, get to the point in their mind where they realize that although they are going through although they are going through deconstruction, there has to be a moment where you say, God does not exist. The devil does not exist. The devil isn't tempting you.
Right.
It's all of these thoughts and feelings that have been pushed on you, and you've been educated in a particular way. And there's traditions and there's a number of other things going on there. But, like we expressed before, it's until we have someone like ourselves, this group here, an Unholy Roundtable, a lot of times people don't understand that, and they don't they have a more difficult time getting to the point where they realize it's not God and it's not the devil.
Yeah.
I think if the devil did not exist in their lore, if they had not invented the devil, then we would all see their God as the baddie, because it's there.
The evidence is there.
It's just
If
covered
you look
up
at
by
Gnosticism,
the fact that, all that bad stuff, that's the devil. That's this other entity that we have no hope of defeating for some weird reason.
For no reason.
I mean, you were basically being told not to think.
Yeah.
Lean not on your own knowledge.
Just don't think the thoughts that you're thinking.
Stop trying to be critically thinking.
Stop trying to be one of those thinkers.
Something you must have learned in school.
Well, my dad actually told me that. He says, the Bible says, don't lean on your own understanding. I said, well, who else's would I use?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Because it tells you to think like a child. It tells you not to lean on your own understanding. And part of that thinking like a child is because children, they have to look to authority figures because they don't know anything. And children's reasoning centers of the brains have not fully functioned yet. Right. So like the book literally says, hey, in order for you to do this, you have to pretend like you don't know anything, listen, blindly follow authoritarian figures, and pretend like you can't follow reason and logic. Like those are the instructions in the book.
And the same authoritarian figures that are saying that will then say, well, we can't understand the mind of God. Right after they've told you what God wants, thinks, does, and how he acts and why he does things.
I actually have a video that I've made, and it's not dropped yet, because I saw someone made a very good point, which is what you guys have just said, is that I'm not rejecting God. I'm rejecting you, because you supposedly say what God's telling me. If God hasn't told me anything, I've not seen God from the
Yeah.
day I was born. I've seen you, and I've seen you, and I've seen you. I'm rejecting you. God wants to come down there and show himself or themselves to me. I'm more than willing to take it on, but I'm just rejecting a human being, a man, more than likely, who has an agenda. Might be a good intentioned agenda, but it's an agenda nonetheless. I'm rejecting that person. So I always find that a very interesting. When I heard that, I was like, that's exactly the point. And most of us have agreed on the different interviews I've done it with each of you. I'm open to the idea there could be a God. I do not believe there is, but okay, one presents itself, fine. But in the meantime, Father Jones, I'm not buying it, right? Because you're the one telling me that. Yeah.
Not only that, but the question then becomes that a subset of any God, like a God's creation, has to have the same evidentiary warrant as the God itself does. So the question then becomes, okay, you think you're being fooled now. When you were believing, think back to then. Did you have evidentiary warrants to believe that Satan existed? Right. And if that Satan is powerful enough to have the powers of the God so you couldn't figure it out, then your question is dumb because you wouldn't be able to figure it out. Otherwise, your God is limited by your ability to beat his non-figure-outable person. It creates a logical it creates a logical loop.
It does.
Well, it creates a void that the human pastors and leaders can step into and manipulate.
Right.
With fallacies. Yeah, typically with fallacies. Or it all goes back to fallacies.
And the more I looked at it, and I think the more anyone looks at it, it's that void is what is filled with absurdities, and I can't abide that. I cannot abide that. And I know that might sound very offensive to some listeners, but there are certain things that all of us find absurd. And really think about it. They're so close. Those absurdities are so close. It's just it just takes one tiny little move on one side of the line, and it truly is absurdity.
Yeah.
And the problem,
my favorite absurdity, I just want to say this really quick, was like the most absurd to me is like really, and one of the more popular stories is Noah's Ark. And I'm like, okay, two of every animal. So how did Noah know which flies were male and which ones were female? Right. And also, how did he get two of every insect? How many insects are there on Earth?
There's millions of insects.
Yeah, there has to be thousands and hundreds of thousands at least, right?
Like,
if just the species of ants were no longer on the planet, our speed through space would change.
Right?
I just want to know which of the 8 humans on that boat got the privilege of carrying the STDs. Did they like separate them
there
out?
You go.
I love that.
You're right. That is
and the antelope survived because none of the lions ate them.
None of them.
Nobody needed to eat.
It's so funny, Scott. When we were just talking about it, I was thinking not only the animals and the mammals and the birds and the insects. I was like, well, what about the amoebas and the germs? These are living organisms.
Yeah.
You, Scott, made my point.
I went there.
So much better.
I went there. And the reason I point that out too is
the STD, which is going to get the most reaction.
STD, I love it.
I'm not going to be like the other Mike. I'm not going to worry about offending people because I want people to know this. If you can be convinced of absurdities, you can be convinced to commit atrocities. Voltaire said that centuries ago. That is so well said. If you can believe all of these things, this is, if you can be taught to believe absurdities, you can be convinced to commit atrocities. And I don't care who gets mad that I call them absurdities. You have to figure that out. It is
the biggest absurdity with Noah's Ark is, where did all the poo go?
That's where the STDs were, maybe.
If anybody's curious from the religious perspective, the answer about Noah's Ark is God performed a miracle so that it was a magnification. This is how it goes. There's a magnification of natural situations so that all of the different what do you call it? Their natural, all the natural instincts were just sort of turned off, and everything was able to come together. And God specifically chose a male and a female, and compelled them to go. And there were, of the unclean animals, there were two of each. There were two pairs, I believe, of the unclean. And I think it's a number more of the clean animals in pairs.
Seven
and
pairs,
because you have to eat the clean animals. And so that's just like the plagues. Miraculous magnification of natural events. So there you go. Now we know.
And now we know. I don't know why
we got some absurdity.
Magic. That's
so
the answer.
magic.
The answer is
yes,
magic.
magical thinking.
Yeah, you left that part. All right, let's move on to the next one. So this is for you, Mike. Again, why are Christians? This is such a good question. Why are Christians so firm on homosexuality but not premarital sex? Or, to Scott's point earlier, mixed cloths or any of the other sins? Why is homosexuality this massive, the worst sin you could ever create, worse than killing people, in terms of the way we view it in this society?
Yeah, and I've looked into this, and it says in the Bible that if obviously we have the horror of what's told to us in Leviticus. If two men sleep together, they should be put to death. But they also talk about a man and a woman. If a man and a woman are married and they commit adultery, they should also be put to death. So there's a differentiation there between, or I should say, there in that moment is established what is an offense that you could be executed for. Later, it talks about premarital sex. Yeah, it talks about, especially in the New Testament, and I think it's in Romans, it talks about where Jesus said to a woman who was a prostitute, go forward and sin no more. Those are the only words about it. So when religious scholars start to break things down, they've got, you're going to get put to death, or you can bring something to the foot of the cross. You see where there's a difference. And when you bring something to the foot of you're able to bring something to the foot of the cross and say, I repent, and Jesus and the Holy Spirit are going to work in my life. Well, then, that's your 11th hour get out of free card. But there's no 11th hour get out of free card that's established in the scripture for homosexuality or what's the other one? Adultery. Those two explicitly say you take them outside the city gates and stone them to death. So then we end up with, on the premarital sex side, hey, the reality is sex feels good. And as human beings, we have a window of opportunity. And all of our genes are they express or they don't express during certain periods of our development. And what we end up with is just a regular standard mammalian response. And that's something that everybody experiences all the time. They don't necessarily experience homosexuality. So it's easy to go after a minority. The other thing is homosexuality was very common and it still is in different cultures, but particularly at that time, the homosexuality among the Greeks was completely commonplace. In fact, it actually helped to define a lot of what we have from the Greeks, all the information that has come to us from them. So when the proto-Jews, the pre-Jewish people in the early Old Testament were going around, they needed to differentiate themselves from the other tribes that they were present with. So they pick and they choose, and I think that's what we end up with.
Do you think, because you said something that I've always heard, and we know it to be true, that that various homosexuality, I'm searching for the right word, not lifestyle is not the word I'm looking for, but you'll see where I'm going. It was more accepted in different cultures in the ancient past very often. But I think you said it was very common. I wonder if it was more or less common or just accepted, so therefore out. We're now, even in America today,
That's a
even with the
great way
level
to
of
that's a
liberalism,
great
we
way to
hide
say
it.
that. So I think people are naturally born however they're born, but we choose to act on what we choose to act upon. Like, I know that butter tastes amazing, but I'm not going to have it in my life because I just got my cholesterol checked, and it's just not something that's for me right now.
Right. Yeah.
So, we can make these decisions, but no, I think that maybe it's possible that there were more or less homosexuals in other times, but I know for sure we can look at the writing. We can look at what Josephus has written about other cultures. Josephus being an incredible historian, and his descriptions of other cultures. And we can clearly see that things were more accepted. To your point, yes, things were more accepted.
If your
If we go to
consequences-
Afghanistan right now, it's a terrible documentary. I mean, I should say it's a well done documentary, but it's terrible to have to experience and watch. But it's called The Dancing Boys of Afghanistan, and it's really something.
Could I add something that perhaps?
Please. Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Perhaps you aren't all aware of. I know I wasn't until this past week. There is a documentary that came out, I believe, in January. I just found out about this last week. I have not watched it yet. It's called The 1946 Mistranslation, where in 1946, the RSV version of the Bible mistranslated a word, changed it from abusive relationships to homosexual LGBTQ type relationships. So before 1946, no Bible said anything about homosexuality in that context. I don't know if any of you have seen that documentary yet.
Yeah, what was changed in the 1940s was specifically the word arsenokoitai, which was a Greek word that was more along the original version of the word pederasty, which was adult man, pubescent or prepubescent boy. And it happened a lot in the churches. It also happened a lot with fighting forces like the 300, like Spartans and stuff like that. There were specific groups that was literally men and their boys that would go out.
Yes.
And the interesting thing about that, in parallel with what Mike said earlier, talking about that was in John 8. It was the last sentence in John chapter 7, and most of chapter 8 was pericope adulteri, which was the adulterous woman that they were going to stone. And that's when Jesus apparently said, "Go and sin no more." But that also added later. That was not seen in any translation, in any of the books and stuff that we have until the 5th century. I mean, it was one of like over 3 dozen passages that were added that were not in the earliest copies we have, which is Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus. That's not in there. It ends like the book of Mark. It doesn't show a risen Jesus. The book of Mark stopped after the women ran from the empty tomb. So there's a lot of changing about this based on this specific topic. Cafeteria Christians picking the parts that they don't care about and virtue signaling the parts that do not affect them. And I think that's what it is. That's why they get on, you have multiple sex partners. You're some umbrella of queer community, whatever it is. We don't like that because it doesn't affect us. Now, the stuff that we do, and even some of the stuff they say not to do, they still do. There's a big hypocrisy there. But yeah, I think it has a lot to do with just picking and choosing the parts that you want to ignore.
I think it's picking and
doubling
choosing the
down
parts
on the
that make them
rest.
uncomfortable. Like if they
Oh,
feel
absolutely.
discomfort, they want to just do away with it and, shame people out of, portraying that publicly.
Yeah.
They want to
Christianity
push it
has a
to
huge
the
problem with
margins.
genitalia.
Yeah. Oh,
If they were honest with themselves, I put this to my uncle once. He was ranting and raving about homosexuals and transsexuals and everything. And I said, what harm has come to you because a certain person loves the same sex?
Yeah.
Personally, what harm have you been inflicted with? That's when he unfriended me, which I was happy to be unfriended. So
bye, Felicia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the twist is his grandson transitioned from a female, which he still loves, and I see them celebrating birthdays and everything. So hypocrisy once again.
Yeah, it's funny when we have several relatives that are super dyed-in-the-wool Christian, hardcore kind of people, and then surprise, your daughter's gay. Well, okay, now what are you gonna do? And there's two sides of me. There's the good and the bad side of me, and the evil side of me is like, yeah, serves you right, because now you see what all these other people have had to put up with, and you're now living with a person who you love, and you're now having to wrestle with that.
Not necessarily, Mike.
Well, and that's the other side of me. It's like at the same time, this poor child is having to deal with all that. So I understand why. I can see where I come from on both of these sides. So in the long run, I'd rather they didn't have to deal with that. But it is sometimes just like these people don't understand any of these issues until all of a sudden it lands on their front doorstep, right?
And they react.
Then they got to wrestle with the reality that Scott and Mike and have dealt with, and all of our other LGBTQ friends have dealt with. And nowadays, I just saw an article today about this guy who had four Trump burger restaurants in Texas, in Houston, and he's being deported because he overstayed his visa from Lebanon. You open a place called the Trump Burger. You open 4 of them, and you're here illegally. The hell is wrong with you? But now all of a sudden he's like, well, wait, I'm one of the good ones. Like, no, you're not.
It's the cougar eating your face party.
Right. Yeah.
Cougars eating your face. I didn't know the cougars would eat my face if I voted for the cougars eating your face party.
It drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. All right, let's move on. I'm going to get off on that one. This is Scott. So Scott, here we are. I think this is a Lawrence Krauss question. Just someone had reposted it. I thought it was a good question. So you're choking. I have 2 options. 1, I perform the Heimlich maneuver. 2, I pray. Which one do you want me to do? It goes to prayer and how people say, oh, prayer will solve everything. Okay. Good luck with that chunk of steak in your throat. So Scott, what do you think about this?
Man, this one really hits close to home. I had a friend of mine, one of my best friends in high school, and he was had a lot of health issues. He was morbidly obese. He was always involved in the church. He had his own church. He literally helped build schools and stuff in Africa as a missionary and things like that. But his health issues got to where he was up to 700 pounds, spent a lot of time in hospitals, but he was always praying. He was always talking about how good the God was. And a year ago right now, he was just getting out of the hospital after a 7-week stay because he had to have a heart thing, but they couldn't do the heart thing because it would mess up his triglycerides, but fixing that would mess up his hydration, which would throw off his sugars and stuff like that. Always talking about prayer, pray for me because God is going to see me through this. And he even, after he got out, he said, my doctor said I was going to be on this oxygen tank for the rest of my life. But I got up on Sunday morning and I prayed and I didn't need that oxygen tank, and God is good and God is healing me. And this is a person that I was an accountability partner for a very long time. And I had to stop being an accountability partner because he was taking off health stuff, but adding like prayer group stuff to his to-do list, his accountability list.
Yeah.
And 6 days after he put the post about, not using the oxygen and stuff anymore, his dad did a wellness check on him and found him dead. So
do I know that guy? We were in
a
group.
No, this was like from high school. He never traveled out.
No. You and I are in a different group, that food group, and there was a guy that used to be in that.
Tiny.
Okay.
That's why you haven't seen
his name. Well, that's not his real name. Unless unless it is, which it is Alabama. It could be his God. But
no, he.
But yeah, I remember that guy. He was very big, and I've never met him, but I just his pictures on Facebook at the time. This is like 10 years ago.
Yeah,
it's a long time ago that I remember seeing him on, but I hadn't seen him since. Okay.
Yeah, he passed away August 28th of last year. Like 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks from today, and this is right after that. I have a special place in my cold, dark heart for people who lean into religiosity rather than taking personal responsibility for things like that. Or people who deny their children medical care.
That's my
Christian scientists.
There is one option. There is one option. You're choking to death. You perform the Heimlich maneuver. The other option is they die. You can put prayer on there if you want. You can pray over them as they die. But that's going to be the result. I
love that God has a plan and he's perfect and his plan is perfect. And somehow us praying, it's like trying to convince God to change his all perfect plan.
Perfect plan.
Right. Like who are we to impose on this relationship?
Exactly.
You know?
And to go deeper into the question, there's more that was involved in this question about medical professionals and how medical professionals have to deal with, spending 16 hours without a pee break on somebody's surgery, only to come out and have the family go, well, thank God.
Yes.
We'll take him to the church next time. But the thing is, if every success is a little, up to God, doesn't that mean that every failure is a failure of that God? Because when you start doing if it doesn't work, it's the Lord working in strange and mysterious ways. That's just you doubling down on BS.
You get to take credit. You also have to take accountability.
The other feature of that, thanking God for all these big things, is they also begin to thank God for the little things. It becomes just, it becomes meaningless. I remember once I had to print some labels at work, and the lady that was running the production line had come in just as I had finished the labels, looking for them. And if she didn't have the labels, the line was going to stop, and she didn't want that. So she came in, and I said, "Oh yeah, they're finished. Let me take them off the machine." She goes, "Oh, thank God." I said, "No, this was me."
I think Larry. It's pronounced Larry.
I do the mundane things, So, and it occurred to me after I was thinking about that later, I said, well, if they're thanking God for these trivial, tiny little things and the great big things, doesn't that dilute everything? Doesn't that minimize? And
I do wonder about that, because you're right. And the thank God is, of course, a statement that we all kind of just say because we grew up in the United States. But I think you're right, though, because how many times we start, I've seen it on Facebook, someone I've gone to school with, oh, I got to thank God I got the apartment. What? You had a good credit score, enough money. That's how you got an apartment. There's not much to it, But you're right. It's like if saving a child from bone cancer and getting your apartment are on the same scale with this God, you're right. It's diluting it, and it seems it does trivialize whatever awesome power that a God should have or be concerned about. Well, and I know sometimes it's just said, but sometimes they truly, I remember one person, and that was a specific example. She did say, thank God I got the apartment. And she was a hardcore Christian, not necessarily a bad way, just a very sweet girl, but that's what she said. I remember, it's just an apartment. He's not looking out for you, or he would have maybe not put you in a position where you had to be so desperate to get an apartment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why didn't God get me a house?
Yeah. Why do we have to even be here? Like that woman in the very beginning, she says, your kid is, or I'm sorry, we only saw it for a second. I'll go ahead and wait on that. Yeah, I'll go ahead and wait on that.
Hang on
until that actually comes up. But the one thing that I did want to add here is that, we can really prove that it's that the difference between the Heimlich maneuver and praying. Even our government will go ahead and send parents to prison for praying. Because if you
instead of a blood
transfusion, you do not take your child into the hospital when they need it, the federal and state government will go ahead and prosecute, and you'll do a lot of time in prison.
No, there are some states that have laws that protect parents from making religious-based medical decisions and their child dying from it. I think Utah is one.
Right.
Idaho is another one.
Yeah,
there are states and they have
the Mormons.
Yeah.
Yep. And even in the Mormon community, there have been parents who have been jailed because of child neglect.
Yeah,
they actually have. Even though they fall under those protections,
they like going after the Jehovah's Witnesses too.
The Jehovah's Witnesses, yeah, because they're the blood transfusion and everything else.
No
right?
blood transfusions.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
The Mormons are real big with kicking their kids out for non-belief as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a whole other kettle of fish. The Jehovah's Witness and the blood transfusion, and this is where I'm not at all on their side, and I'm going to try to say this so it doesn't come off the wrong way. How do you wrestle with, I'm their parent, I know what's best for them, and because that's a broad statement, and then but someone say up until this point, and what is that point? You know what I mean? Because if I say, well, no, my kids who's 11. And Scott, you and I know someone who has a young child. It's a trans child. There's a young child. How do I say my kid says they're trans and they're 8 years old, and I'm going to allow that because I believe that's fine and I believe all that. Another parent across town says, no, that's absolutely wrong. Where does the government, what line do you find where the government can say, okay, but you're raising them wrong and you're raising them right? And you say blood transfusion, and maybe that's not a guaranteed cure, but you're allowed to believe that, or you shouldn't believe that, and therefore we as doctors should agree with it or not agree. There's a line. I don't have an answer. I'm literally throwing it out because I see what the wrestle is, and I don't know how you would quantify that from a law.
This gets into a very deep conversation about where I feel that secular humanism is a better moral system because it's based in the well-being of the people involved. And that well-being, no matter who, well-being would have specific markers. When you talk about rates of suicide for transgender children plummeting when they have one affirming person in their household, that is a definitive marker that shows gender-affirming care is working in the best interests of that child, especially when it's backed by every medical, psychological, biological, and lexicographical organization on the planet almost. Whereas if the child dies, you have a very valid metric that if a child does not get blood that the child needs, it's going to die, which is against its well-being.
Yes.
So that's where I think this is why I think the government should stay out of decisions like that when it comes to religious-based things. The well-being of the child should always be first and foremost, and that decision of well-being should involve the child as much as possible, and be backed up by evidence-based data. Because when you talk about prayer has been tested. There was a blind study. One of the religious groups, they had 3 subsets. They had almost all the same surgeries, groups that were being prayed for, groups that wasn't being prayed for, and a group that was being prayed for and were told they were being prayed for. The group that was being prayed for without being told and the group that wasn't being prayed for had about the same risk of the same numbers of complications and stuff like that. The group that knew they were being prayed for actually had slightly worse outcomes because just like anything else, if you think you got it on easy street, you're going to be lax.
Right.
That specific one was a small sample study. I think it was like 700 or something like that. But there's no evidence. It gets back to evidence-based stuff. There's absolutely no evidence that prayer works in any evidentiary fashion.
No,
I think
do the
moral of the story.
Or watch them die. Pray while you're doing the Heimlich. That's fine.
Hope I do this right.
Yeah.
Scott,
if I'm in a car accident and I'm giving someone CPR, I'm an atheist and I might still be praying if I really just
to hope.
Why not?
The issue, I think,
throw it out to the universe.
It becomes a little more crowded, Scott, when you look at an issue like homeschooling for school vouchers.
True.
Where the parents say, well, I know what's best for my child, despite all the evidence that most of them don't.
Says
Now,
you don't.
some of them do. Some of them are capable of preparing their children for higher education or whatever. I believe the vast majority are not. And the vast majority of homeschool is religious based. They get their curricula from religious organizations, which are demonstrably inaccurate and just bad. And then they try to go into college and immediately struggle. So I think that kind of clouds the situation, and the people who want to homeschool or have this so-called parental choice will point to bad schools or bad teachers or situations with public funding of schools, which ironically they're making worse by pushing for school vouchers for private schools. It's going to get worse. And say, well, see how terrible it is. I can do better myself, and I should have the decision on what to do. It becomes
that's the same type of question, and that's exactly what Larry is exactly the point. It's like, okay, there's a line. I don't know necessarily where it's at, but I've never been a big fan of the homeschooling because I've known too many kids that were homeschooled by morons, and they grew up to be morons, and now they've got their own kids that will be morons, and it's sad. I mean, I'm joking about it, but it's a sarcastic and bitter joke because it pisses me off, and I've got close people to me because there's no reason that child should have ever been schooled by you. You're an idiot.
And the more they homeschool,
education, you're just not a good, smart person. Why do you think you have any credibility teaching this other person that what you don't know? And I know you didn't really teach them because you don't know it anyway.
Yeah. The more it goes on, the more it harms society as a whole.
As a whole,
take on the role of being a teacher without any training. Same thing. Pastors do that too. They take my work of being a therapist and like they're like, oh, I'm a counselor, and it's like, you have no qualifications for that whatsoever. So it's like me trying to be a doctor, and I'm not.
Purely biased education. They're a counselor from a Christian perspective, which doesn't help if you're not Christian. I was talking to my mom one time. I think I told one of you guys on a call. She lives in Florida, and she lives in a small town, and she was saying her pastor, who's the pastor of the biggest church in this town, Callahan, Scott. He's a counselor, grief counselor. So like, and she's like, so if the case was everything going on at the school, brother or whatever his name is, he can go in. Like, yeah, that sounds real good, but what about Muhammad, who might be a grief counselor at the mosque? Like, your little town would lose their collective fucking mind if mosque guy comes in there, right? But he's as equally qualified because he went through training too. He just didn't go through Christian training because he's Muslim, you know? So it's like, you're not a counselor. I mean, anything's probably, well, no, that's not even a good thing. I'm about to say anything's better than nothing, but that's probably not true at all. No. You could be way wrong, right?
Right.
Or
nothing is better than a bad thing.
And you're a Christian, you're telling him to pray to Jesus. That's not going to help, right?
Right.
Yeah, move on. They try to keep us rolling. This is actually a question I wanted to get you guys as a group, because this probably comes up. We've all experienced it. And this person says, an acquaintance of mine is dying of cancer. She has young kids and is in the process of moving to another state to be close to her family for the last days. What do you say to someone, and this person was an atheist, that's dying? And there is there's a good question there, because it's really easy for a Christian to say, and we're going to get to this other segue later, but it's easy to say, you're going to go home to Jesus. You're going to see your grandparents, blah, 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 blah. We don't say that. We can't say that. What do you say to these people that you've met and they're dying that you feel is comforting? Or how do you do it? I'm curious.
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is I would simply say, I'll remember you.
There you go. Yeah. I like that, actually. That's all I can.
I see the situation.
We're going to die. There's nothing we can do. And I'm going to echo exactly what he just said. It's going to be about our memories. It's going to be about shared experiences. It's going to be about we still, if we are able to, we should still be creating some shared experiences now that we know that time is coming. Mm-hmm. I think anything involving afterlife, living sweet in the bosom of Jesus is just it. I can't tell you how vehemently I hate that. Like, live. Those future things that this whole earth is just dirty rags for the next life is just so limiting and
wasteful.
You know, there's no reason to even look. We don't know what's out there, so why bother with it? We comfort, we be there for them. We let them know that we are there for them. We let them know that we're not alone. We keep creating memories. We keep creating experiences. But there's absolutely nothing that a religion that you haven't already been indoctrinated into is going to help with that. No matter how much of a therapist the priest thinks he is.
Right. Yeah.
I've been in a situation where my father-in-law and my mother were both dying, and my mother knew full well that I was atheist. And I thought to myself, how am I going to talk to mom about all of this? And I said, you know what? My goal here is to do no harm. But my goal is also to not deny myself the way that I feel. So I say to the person who's on their deathbed, you have your particular belief. So as you're going through this transition, focus on the important parts of your belief, because it's not going to matter.
Yeah,
it's not going to matter.
I'll agree with that. Yeah, I'll agree with that. In that
but at the
situation,
same time, it absolutely sickens me to the core. I'm very, very much in the same boat as you. It's just I guess I've learned in my old age that people are always going to let me down, or I should say, human beings are capable of letting me down in one way or another, or causing me grief in one way or another. And how I perceive everything makes the difference, you know? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can do no harm, and I'm not going to be shocked when I'm in a situation where either I've been let down or someone, or I should say, and then at that point, when someone does something, I'm not necessarily let down or hurt or whatever. It's just part of what the way humans act, the things that humans do. And then I'll gravitate toward folks like y'all, you know?
Yeah.
But when I see someone in a position where, like my mother was dying, I just said, hey, Mom, you know, all this is going to be over with soon. You know, you're going to be with Jesus. And she says, how can you say that? You don't believe it. And I said, well, it's really simple. There's no reason for me to tell you anything else. I mean, I understand where the origin is. I was part of that. You know, you're the one who taught me everything. You know, my mother was the one who taught me everything about religion before I started going to school. I went to kindergarten already knowing the Lord's Prayer, the Nicene Creed, the Apostles' Creed. The list goes on, and it was because of her. So when I'm faced with her mortality right then and there, I just thought to myself, I guess I'll just do no harm. But it bothered me so much inside that I had to that I wasn't able to say anything against it. But then the other part of me says, what good would it do?
What good would it do?
You know?
Yeah, I'm the same way. When it comes to grief, it's like talking to a child, or it's kind of both ways. If you talk to a little kid and you want to just boost their esteem by saying whatever, you know, that was your grandmother. That's the best picture of a horse I've ever seen. He's got 5 legs and he's purple, but it's the best picture of a horse I've ever seen. It's not the best horse. It's not the best anything you've ever seen. But to that child, it's important. Or to an older person, say you're talking to your 90-year-old grandmother, you know, and you look beautiful. No, she looks like a 90-year-old old lady. But does she want to hear that? No, she doesn't want to hear that. So you're right. It's the same thing. Like, that's not true. But we say these things because it's comforting. And if saying or letting them say and not disputing it, that you're going to go and be in the arms of Jesus, if that gets them through that last day or month or whatever, I will live to fight the argument, all these things we talked about. I'll fight those battles when they're due. But that individual, if it makes them feel better, fine. But they're foreshadowing. Mike brought it up earlier. We are going to have a video here in a little bit where that is not necessarily a good answer, but it's a common answer, right?
But here's the dichotomy, though, is if it was an atheist that was dying, a religious person would come in and try to get you to believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
So
actually, my father did that on his own deathbed to me. I lost my father to cancer about 14 years ago. And I had the privilege of taking care of him when he was dying. He was on hospice for a good while. And there was this particular, I was still working at the time, but I was taking some FMLA time, intermittently to care for him. So we had home health coming, and this 1 week in particular was really important to me at work. And I had a big meeting, and I was like getting ready to go into this meeting, and I had a call. And I had told the front desk person, like, hold my calls until this meeting is over. And they poked their head in, and I was like, I told you to hold it. And they're like, you're going to want to take this one. And my heart sunk for a second, because I thought this was the call, right? And it was in some sense, but it wasn't the call I thought I was getting. Anyways, I pick up the phone, and it was my stepmom, and she's like, he just won't take no for an answer. And that, like, you have to get here. He's like demanding that you be here right now. And I had to like cancel the meeting. I'm it took me an hour to drive to their house. I get there, and I'm like, hi, Dad, I'm here. Like, what is it that you needed to stop heaven and earth to like get me here today for? And he said, I was worried. He thought he was dying. He said he was worried that he was going to die without talking to me about my eternal soul. Basically, he was like, he knew that I was an atheist.
Yeah.
And he was respectful about it for the most part, for being as religious as he was. But on his like when he really thought that moment was coming, that he was going to go, he thought like he just had a panic and was like, get her here. And I have to he wanted to use his dying breath to try to save my
one of the last
from
things,
damnation.
One of the last things my father said to me before he passed was he hoped that my brother and I would be born again so that he would see us.
So I guess I would just answer the question quickly by saying, what do I say to a dying person? It really depends on who they are and what they believe. I'm not going to lie to them and pretend like I believe something that I don't. But I think I would try to say things that are comforting without lying. And I think I would listen more and talk less. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's probably a good, listen more and talk less. That's probably, and really, that's probably what they want. They just want to get this off their chest. And both of you guys' situation, that was their dying wish. Okay. It could be worse, right?
I just said, Dad, I don't know what will happen in the future, but I appreciate that you care enough for me to want that for me.
I agree. Randy, I put Randy's question up. I said, but I was like, I don't know what that means, Randy. But then you corrected. He said, yeah, sorry, fat fingered it. Yeah. I was like, okay, I'm hoping none of them guys know that answer, because I don't know what the insuil means. I was like, all right. So no problem, Randy. Thanks for checking in, man. But Randy did say, religion only is on the gas, no brakes. And that's exactly it.
Yeah.
He's totally true on that one. I'm going to jump to another one.
And
go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
With what Randy said, with religion having all gas, no brakes, I think on the flip side of that, we should, as secularists, as humanists, as atheists, we should try to live by just these two little things. Do no harm, but take no shit. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. In a lot of cases, that's exactly
because we know
right?
that they're always going to be on the gas pedal. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have a T-shirt that says
I'll
that.
add lead by example.
Yeah. We do need to push back, it's fine. I have no problem pushing back. I don't really go out and start fights, but come on, there's a point.
No.
Yeah. Let's jump into another one. This is for you, Annette. This is another representative of all womankind. And we talked about this before. I think you and I were just talking about, why do conservative Christians bash only the women in porn? Why do they not bash the men? Like the women aren't having sex with themselves, right? which is legitimately a good point. I think it even goes back to the Lilith kind of thing, right? Yeah, why is it only women, when it comes to sexual things, women are always treated far worse, the harlot sort of mentality, right? All the other four of us, we could go out and screw everything we want. And like, oh, that's just boys being boys, you know, a little wild life. You do it, Annette. And we're like, slut. You know what I mean? It's like instantly. It's not even, you know, I'm in gray area for a lot of people, right? It's a weird thing. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like it you know, singles out women as these like moral corrupters, while men we have to ignore, you know, minimize their participation in, you know, in that,
right,
their role in it. I think that imbalance really reflects like these broader patterns that we see in religious spaces about, you know, sexual morality, is that like women are held to different standards than men, you know, like that is right off the bat. And like our moral misgivings in this way are, you know, we are seen as less forgivable, maybe in that way, that men are, it's just like, it's expected that they'll be tempted. It's expected. And that we are the temptresses. Right. And so, and that goes back to, I mean, that's why ultimately it boils down to why women, even in other religions like Islam, they're expected to wear a hijab, right? Like the hair, and in Orthodox Jewish religions too. Like I live in a community here in Chicago where there's many Orthodox Jews that live in this area, and you can kind of tell because the women wear wigs, right? And the same thing, like they're covering their hair because their hair is, you know, somehow some sort of like part of their sexual strength, and that they, you know, are using it as a tool to tempt men, and they're expected not to do that.
The married
women.
Right.
Oh, the good. Yeah, that's a good distinction. But still, like, you know, we are expected to, use our agency in that regard, where men are kind of let off the hook, you know,
totally
for
off
that.
No one's ever questioned me about that. I mean, no, you know, my entire life, no one's ever looked down on me for having sex with girls and women throughout my teens and then, you know, early 20s or whatever. No one's ever said anything about that. No one ever thought anything about that. They plus they knew me, like, okay, that's what Mike does, whatever, you know, a little bit of wild past. But it was wild in a almost admirable way, in the sense that, you know, not the same girl that would be doing the same things I was doing would have 100% different reaction, right? And
that's because you're defiling her father's property.
Oh, brother!
That's why Islam, Judaism, all of the Abrahamic religions that are, you know, have roots in the Old Testament. I said it before: women were property.
Property. Yeah.
When a young woman is raped, you don't send him to prison. You pay her father for taking her virginity.
He has to marry her.
And then marry her.
Yeah.
She has to marry him. Right.
It's always an ownership type of a thing. Even in slavery, Jewish men were released in slavery after 7 years. Women were not released.
Right.
It's an ownership thing. So when
handmaids,
when a woman is cheating, she has defiled her husband's property, so she should die. That's, to me, that's what it all comes down to. Is it's just about this property, and sexual purity is about the sex should be specifically for the man you're going to be bought from or for.
Even in the way we say things, maybe not as much as we've done, but there's still the idea, I'm going to ask her father if, you know, to marry her. The hell's he up to? Right? I mean, I don't know that that's a common thing with, say, a younger generation. I got nieces and nephews in their 20s. I should ask them that. But that's, you know, we all know that's a thing, right?
Yeah.
What the hell? I mean, how old is that left over from that literal thing where I am her father and therefore property, you know? And I'm sure that still goes on very common. It's not in a world I live in, But
sure, there's a lot of traditions around weddings, like even just the bride wearing white, and just like the veil and the giving. Father gives her away, and like all of that.
Yeah,
and the white is not purity. The white is not purity. Let's go ahead and make sure we nix that one. The white was never about purity. It was about affording a dress that you can wear once and not get anything on.
Not get it.
I think it was Queen Victoria. It was a Victorian thing. She wore a white dress because most women wore regular, whatever clothes. So white became the wedding thing as a symbol of affluence. You wear a white dress because it's something you can't wear for housework or yard work or field work.
There you go.
Oh, wow.
Just want to acknowledge real quick that Randy is jamming. Thanks, Randy, for jumping in and putting some comments. So we do appreciate it.
So overall, I guess I just want to say, like, I'm not at all anti-porn. Like, I'm actually like pro. I'm pro porn. I'm sex positive, right? Like but watch all the porn you want. I don't give a shit. But honestly, like there are lines that I draw, just like any other media that I consume. Is that like I like to draw the line at like violence against women. Sure. And I also want to plug for, I'm very anti like strangulation and choking in porn and sex in general, because it really is like that place where it's like crosses the line into like that is like life ending. There's a lot of research to show that there's a overlap between men who strangle their opposite sex partners. There's a very high correlation with cop killers, terrorist activity, and murder. Period. Like if you choke your partner, you might as well raise your hand and say, "Hi, I'm a murderer." But other than that, like
domestic violence.
Exactly. Yeah, and killing animals too. That's another thing. But
it's a big one.
That aside, like that, I mean, and I know that's a whole side conversation, but just I'm sex positive and watch all the porn you want. But yeah, there a lot of the way, just like any other topic, the onus is always on women to, we are expected to be obedient and silent, and if we step out of line, we get the punishment. It's
right. No, I'm gonna go on.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just thinking, I'm gonna have to talk to your husband. Like, what does she want for Christmas? Obviously she wants porn. what kind of
vibrator?
Light, not choking, not snuff films. She said very clearly, no snuff films. All right. Whatever. So Larry, this comes up all the time, and we kind of hit on these in different things. I hate when people say God kept me alive during a natural disaster. So does that mean that people that didn't make it deserve to? Am I reading this right? So does that mean that the people that didn't make it didn't deserve to live? It really irks me when people say that. That's always bothered me as well. How God kept your house, destroyed your entire neighborhood, but it kept your house because you prayed harder? What the hell?
Yeah. But there's, once again, you give me a lot in every question, Mike. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So one of the things that I thought about was several years ago, maybe 10 years ago or so, there were some tornadoes that went through Washington, Illinois, destroyed the majority of the town. And I remember at the time I got to work and the news was on the TV in the break room, and I was watching it before I went to work. And the Chicago media was down there, and this guy says, "Oh yes, and one final note before we go back to the studio, of the 6 churches in town, none of them were damaged." That's newsworthy. Now, my thought was, if there's a God and he knows which church is doing it correctly, he had a chance to destroy the other 5.
Right.
And he didn't do it. So yeah. The other thing is, I don't know if we should get into a story. I'll try to make it quick. My dad, as you know, was a very evangelical, believed in demons possessing inanimate objects, very way out there. He was also a bailiff at a jail in Southwest Missouri for a while. And he told me a story one day. And he said, yeah, we had a guy that was in the jail because he was going to be going on trial for murder. He killed some people, and it was a big case and everything. And my dad, being the jailer there, would talk to him, and he was trying to bring him to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
He was evangelizing. And he said the guy accepted Jesus. And we were so overcome by this and everything. He says, and the reason that he was a murderer was because when he was a little younger, he had played Dungeons and Dragons, and he'd done the evil moves.
Oh my God.
So my question to him, and I had to be careful because I was driving at the time, I started to question him. He says, nope, that's the way it is. It's a fact, and there's no arguing it.
Fact.
Yeah. That's how strong he believed this. And I simply wanted to ask him, what about all the other hundreds of thousands of people that played Dungeons and Dragons and didn't kill anybody?
Yeah.
So it goes back to cherry picking, goes
Yeah.
back to, well, I prayed, so I survived. The problem is some of those people that died also prayed, but we don't know about it because they're dead and they can't tell us that they prayed and lived.
Right. It's like a
That's the
survivor
catch.
bias.
That's the situation nobody sees.
Yeah.
You can't ask them.
My wife shouted to me from the other room when the floods were happening in Tennessee and North Carolina. She shouted to me from the other room. She said, "Uh-oh, some people in Tennessee and North Carolina really effed up."
Yeah.
And I knew exactly what she meant.
They're being smited. Yeah.
They didn't pray right or hard enough.
It's so annoying, just on a human level. It's like the questions we just said, we ask, it's like, what does that mean for the people who tried to pray and tried to do everything that they thought was the best, and they still didn't work? And how do you justify that? I guess that's where people come up with the idea of what's it called?
Survivor's
guilt.
Survivor's guilt.
Yeah. My brother was killed in the same car accident that I wasn't, and you feel very bad. I can see, it's a human thing. My brother was hit by a car when we were little. He was 5 or something, and my stepfather, he lived. So, but my stepfather had just been talking to him, and he left my stepfather's house and was going to run down the street to where we were living. They weren't married at the time, and he ran right on the street and got hit. So my stepfather felt bad for years because, like, had I just said one more thing to him, I'd have talked to, and I'd have stopped that 1 second, the car would have gone, and Alan wouldn't have got hit by a car. Like, you human wants to say, I could have done this, but you can't. It's just life. Chaos goes on.
I have a friend.
Say, I prayed, and that's why he didn't get hit.
Yeah.
No,
correlation
again,
is not
chaos.
always causation.
I have a friend who
Annette said it. I was dying to say it.
Yeah, correlation does not equal causation. You're right.
I have a friend whose son, who's a teenager or just an older teenager, 17, 18, 19. And they lived in the north suburbs. And one night he was hit by a car. He was kind of sideswiped. So he went to the hospital. He had mostly just bruises and contusions, and they had to check him out and everything. And she said she was so grateful because she knew that her recently deceased mother was his guardian angel. And I said, and I couldn't say this to her because she's such a nice person, and we're friends.
Right.
I would have.
But he has a terrible, terrible guardian angel because he got hit by a car. Yeah. She's a little slow, She could have pushed him out of the way, a little bit sooner,
Right.
He wouldn't have got hit by a car, but he got hit by a car.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like Clarence. He hasn't earned his wings yet. He's obviously a terrible guardian angel.
God kept me alive, but he got my attention with a Volvo,
If you think a human becomes an angel, when angels were in heaven before humans were created, based on that really horrible book, even the Goat Herder's Guide to the Galaxy does not say that people become angels. Nothing about that does. And if I'm not mistaken, most Christian sex cults, whatever you want to call them, most Christian denominations, I think they believe like the soul rests until the rapture.
Well, Catholics will
When
get to
asked
guardian
about it,
angels.
Yeah.
well,
So
when
like,
asked about it, in the Hebrew, there's a bunch of different words that they use for the same thing, or I should say, there's a number of different words that or spellings that they will use for the word death. There's one way you're dead in Christ, so you were a believer, and you died, and now you're waiting for the second coming. You're dead. You're a dead soul. You're lost. You're not going to be able to obtain the kingdom of heaven. And then just to experience physical death, just as a matter of, pragmatic, secular sort of, that person's no longer alive. And it clearly says in the Bible that the dead know nothing. So the idea that we would be able to come back in any kind of form means that's completely inaccurate. There's no evidence for that being said in the Bible at all. It says that, I believe it is Jesus that says the dead know nothing.
Really?
So
I just want to do a real quick shout out to Brian, because I haven't talked to
I
Brian
was
in
gonna
years.
say, Mike, we got a OG in the house, Brian Bueno.
Brian is another person here in Chicago. At least I say still Chicago. Brian, I haven't talked to you in so long. I don't know if you still live here. But yeah, surrendering all critical faculties and God will love you. That's exactly it. And then Cynthia, jumping on your point, Mike, humans and angels are different categories according to the Bible. Yeah. I mean, and again, even, which is always kind of funny, regardless, like, okay, it's still the Bible we don't believe in, but at least the people that do believe it, you're not even reading it correctly. It's just ridiculous.
Right. Another example of atheists having a lot more, or I should say, it's another example of, in my experience, that atheists have a lot more understanding of what's really stated in the Bible than a lot of Christians do. And it's probably goes back to, there's only so many things that you hear every time you go to church. It's the same things regurgitated.
Yeah.
If I end up in a conversation with Christians, I often ask them, and I try to ask them respectfully, can I ask you if you've ever read the Bible? And if they're being honest, usually they say no. And I think that goes to, this is just kind of like, what they're born into, what they're taught growing up. It becomes part of the culture, but they don't, I'm like, I don't understand how you can subscribe, with what's at stake, which is your eternal damnation, to a book that you've never read. Seems kind of silly to me.
Or they certainly haven't read the whole thing, right? I mean,
right. They read the parts that are the nice parts that they read in church.
And they also accuse the atheists of not reading the Bible as well.
Yeah.
Oh, you must not have read the Bible.
No, that's how I became an atheist.
Yes.
Right?
I was this close to being a pastor. How do you think I got here?
Right? Exactly it. I like Brian. Whoops. I'm playing it. And Cynthia also read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. Yeah. I mean, go, you think.
Exactly, Cynthia.
It's a horrible book. 0 out of 10.
Yeah.
Horrible main character.
Maybe a 1 star on Amazon.
You got part 1, the Old Testament, part 2, the New Testament, part 3, the Book of Mormon, part 1.5, the Quran. All 4 of them, horrible main character that everybody thinks is the good guy. Just 0 out of 10. Do not recommend.
Of course, Trump's favorite book is 2 Corinthians. So it's a bad joke. 2 Corinthians walk into a bar.
The funny thing about that, he was actually asked one time what his favorite Bible verse was, and he said, "I don't know, probably the one about an eye for an eye," which is literally the only Mosaic law that Jesus directly contradicted.
That's it's so ridiculous. So ridiculous.
Let me rephrase. It's written in the book that the character of Jesus supposedly said that. Let me be very clear about my belief in whether that was actually uttered by a person.
So let me put one more point on this question.
One quick, and then we're going to jump.
Yeah. So the ones that prayed said, "God kept me alive." They would also have to explain all those that survived without praying.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
They would also have to explain all those people who survived the same natural disaster without praying. or
Right.
beseeching to a God. Did
Yeah.
prayer really work, or didn't need it?
Well, yeah. There's no blind study when it comes to that, right? They just, no control group. Yeah, it's all right. I moved on. We're gonna wrap up here in a bit because I want to ask one more question. I'm gonna ask Mike this question just because it's on my mind, and then we're gonna go to the video that we had earlier. Where's this question? Mike and Scott both kind of answer this question before the rest of us. I think this is it. Yeah. So this is this lady claimed that God cured her gayness. She preached about how Jesus is the way and how she detransitioned and no longer dates women and how her husband was also turned straight, which I just love that. Like, okay, you were both gay, which is I actually know a couple couples like that for sure. They were both gay. They got married because of the era that they grew up in. It was easier to get married than it was to both come out, you know? Did they turn straight? No, they absolutely did not. But in this case, this person said, yeah, I used to date women, but I'm over that. And so is my husband. He no longer goes to the manhole or whatever gay bar he was going to before. Scott and Mike, but Mike, I'll start with you, and Scott, jump in. What do you guys think about this cured gay, that pray the gay away?
Yeah, the pray the gay away makes me want to gag. But I can say that this really does speak to the wonderfulness of humanity. We are so widely, our experiences are so wide and so diverse that we have such a cool brain in us that we can experience a desire in one way, or we could experience a desire in another way. We can feel comfortable in multiple different ways. And if a person genuinely feels, because everybody's perception is their reality, that they felt a particular way and now they feel a particular way, after a period of time, good. Great, good on you. But when you start to, but what is just sickening is the idea that you can call upon some Bronze Age text written by people who didn't know where the sun went at night. And I know that I've said this before, but to call on some Bronze Age text from some illiterate shepherds from a mixed bag of tribes, and use that as the reason in your way that you're going to think about how you feel inside, the way that you're born. I mean, come on. And I kind of got to get off that one, and I'm going to hand it over to Scott because I get so hot about it.
Yeah, I can feel it.
I don't do well with the absurdity, but I love the question. And it has to be looked at, because this is happening and people are posting it on TikTok. They're saying things like this.
Oh yeah.
So that's why I had to start out focusing on the positive. We have wonderful options and opportunities for ourselves, but Scott, what do you have to add to it?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go a little different direction with this, because this was talking about how she detransitioned, she was transgender, she was a lesbian, the husband was, she went through this and that. And I know as part of what I've had to deal with my upbringing and a lot of religious trauma based in my sexuality is I have a personality disorder that one of the key characteristics is an identity disorder. There's so many parts of myself that I don't have a solid grasp on as far as who I am. And churches are predatory to people like that.
Yes.
Religion is absolutely predatory to people like that. And like this person trying to find out who they are, just never finding a way to fit into a world that with those particular proclivities, parts of who they are, it's the world shunning them and them just desperately trying to find that spot a lot of times. My heart goes out to them, but just that's another little dark space I have in my heart for religions and churches that just really are so predatory on people like this that you have to pray the gay away and just convince you to do that. They're trying to fix a problem they started by making the problem worse.
I think
I just
think that religion can be really harmful. And that's something that a lot of Christians, they don't like to hear. That religion can harm. They just like to live in the world where religion is so wonderful and it helps everybody. And but what they don't acknowledge is that when they purport things like somehow being gay is a choice, that's really what they're saying. Like, hey, being gay is a choice. And so I like to ask them, like, when did you choose to be straight? When did you make that choice?
It's a good question. Legitimate question.
Yeah, and what it ignores is that not only does gay conversion not work, but that it is so harmful that people who have gone through gay conversion actually have much, much higher rates of suicide. They have higher rates of drug and alcohol addiction. And, it really causes long-term damage in people's lives. And that has rippling effect outside of, just that person as well. But it really doesn't, the church doesn't like to take accountability for the fact that they cause real harm to people by doing this. It's really upsetting.
It's very upsetting.
I did want to bring up one thing. I think a post had come across earlier that said, all of the homosexual activities were specific to men. I did want to put a qualifier on that. In Paul's letter to the Romans, I think it was Romans 125 or 126, he did talk about even the women gave over their natural desires the way the men did, and how they were fire and brimstone or whatever after that. But no, that was the one place, I think the only place, where women giving over to unnatural desires for each other the same way men do was mentioned in the Bible. Because again, throughout the rest of the thing, they were property.
Yeah, and I think Cynthia had made that point that the Bible had never had issues with lesbians. So if you say it happened once, but you're right, and Cynthia's
Romans 125, I think.
But again, ask anybody if they've ever heard that. No, it's man shall not lie with a man, and Christians will. And religious people will couch that all as we meant all homosexuals, but you didn't say that specifically. And we all know the ick factor is reserved for the men, right?
Yeah.
Woman on woman porn is going to run rampant all through everywhere, but men is like, oh, it's the scourge of the earth, right? We all know.
And even going further than that, and it's a societal thing too, where just the religiosity and the patriarchy crossover is when you hear about all of these issues with the transgender community. It's always about protecting people from transgender women. You never hear about trans men. Mm-hmm. You never hear anything about someone born female at birth. Mm-hmm. When you get down to it, it's just like because they still think of a trans woman as a man because they just can't let that go. That's where that all comes from, and it's all patriarchal. Mm-hmm. It's just, and a lot of all of the Abrahamic religions, even Jainism and stuff, at their core are patriarchal in that way.
Yeah, in fact, I saw a video yesterday where they had a military guy, and he was, typical sort of almost pro-type military, very buff and just hairy and just, really strong looking. He was holding his gun. He'd been in the military, in the Army or Marines, I can't remember, but that sort of infantry looking kind of guy, sergeant, I can't remember his role, but not a low level guy, like 17 years. And then he showed a picture of his wife, and she's also in the same branch. And then the point of that was that both of these people are trans. The guy is a trans man. I'm sure I say that correct, right? And the woman is a trans woman. They're married, and they're 17 years in the military, or at least the guy was military 17 years. And now, because of Hegseth, they're being kicked out without pensions. That's a new thing. They've just said 17 years. This guy's been in the military for 17 years. And all of a sudden, he's not good enough, and he can't even get retirement because of the Bible. Come on. It serves no other purpose. We know it's the Bible. We know and again, this is Hegseth that we saw in the first video in the very first part of this call. He's going to that church, that Christian nationalism church is driving so much ridiculousness. It's pissing me off. I'm pissing me off just talking about it. One quick, Brian. Yeah, he died for 37 hours. That I always say that same thing. You know, Jesus gave up a long weekend for our souls. Okay, good. Thanks, man. All right, I've worked all long weekend, so it's not a big deal, really. Let's jump to our last question. It's really not a question per se, but I'm going to do this. We talked about this earlier when we were talking about what to say when someone dies. And this came up actually a few weeks ago during the floods in Texas, the one where at Camp Mystic. And I saw this woman on TikTok, and I thought I was floored by it, and you'll see it here in a second. But this is when Jesus is not comforting. And I'm just going to set it up because I kind of shortened hers up a little bit. She's a Christian. She was a Christian, Jesus person, the whole deal. This isn't coming from an atheist. This is coming from a person who believes in Jesus today and believed in Jesus before this situation happened. So keep that in the back of your mind. This is where her perspective is. So here we go.
Child in an accident who
I'm going to restart.
Why does this picture suck? As a parent who lost a young child in an accident,
actually, hold on just 1 second. Just for the podcast, this is the picture of Jesus holding a little girl in his arm, and 2 little girls are running up to him. This is in heaven, and they've got Camp Mystic t-shirts on. Camp Mystic was the Christian school, the Christian camp that killed like 30-something little kids during the floods. And
oh my God! And he's standing in water. I just realized he's standing in water.
I didn't even notice that.
Oh, what kind of horrible!
Yeah. But this was very popular. What was that? A month or so ago. I saw this picture dozens of times on Facebook and others. This is an AI picture, but again, these little Camp Mystic t-shirt little girls are running and jumping in Jesus's arms, and this woman is responding to that. I'm sorry, I should have set that up earlier. So I'm gonna restart her video just to give the people at home that are not watching it on podcast, they'll have a perspective of it. So here's what she says about that picture.
So why does this picture suck? As a parent who lost a young child in an accident, who received, in a very kind-hearted way, many images like this. After my child died, I'm going to tell you why this sucks. There were hundreds of people in our corner on the day that our son drowned. They were praying for us. They were petitioning God on our behalf. My own children, the siblings of Garrett, spent hours on their knees that day, fervently praying to God for a miracle. And it didn't happen. Garrett still died. After Garrett died, people came out of the woodwork to tell us Garrett's in a better place. Garrett's with Jesus. Garrett is so happy to be with Jesus, and he would want you to be happy that he's with Jesus too. So let me tell you what this said to my mother heart. It said to me, your pain's really not that bad. What happened isn't really that big of a deal because look, Jesus! Jesus didn't heal Garrett because Jesus wanted Garrett back, and Garrett wanted to be with Jesus. Look at how happy they are. When a grieving parent hears over and over again, your son is in a better place, your child is in a better place, what it says to them is that you are not enough. Your arms were not enough. Your love, your nurturing, your support, your protection, it wasn't enough. He's in a better place with somebody better, doing better things. At the time, and still to this day, I cannot imagine a better place for Garrett to be than in my arms, or in the arms of his father, or in the arms of his siblings, playing with his siblings, laughing with us, spending time with us as a family. It's been 11 years and it still doesn't make any sense to me why it happened, why God didn't grant us our miracle. I'm not speaking for all parents, but I'm telling you exactly what this did to me in the early stages of my own bereavement. More than anything, I felt like it invalidated my pain. Like I really didn't have the right to feel that insurmountable pain and that kind of like soul-crushing grief because Jesus, even with my devotedness to Christianity, even with my faith and belief in Jesus, it did not take away the pain of losing him. And so when I saw stuff like this over and over again, it said to me, it's really not that bad.
Dude, it was terrible. When I saw it, I was like, okay, I gotta stop watching. I'm gonna cry because it's like, Jesus, how many people probably do that? And they're not thinking, and you can forgive people for not thinking, but her perspective on that is so right. I mean, as if several of us have kids, maybe all of us, I don't know. We know all of us, without a doubt, can't imagine losing our children. And for someone to come say that, and her perspective of like, you're saying that person, that my child is better off without me? Well, fuck you. They're not.
And if she had
Jesus
called them out at the
that.
time, if she
Jesus
had called them,
said that.
yeah, and if she had called them out at the time with how hurtful that is, she would have been looked at as, oh well, she's just emotional, or she doesn't really mean that, or she's bad, or she's against Jesus or whatever. It's a no-win situation.
Yeah.
The problem I have with this is everybody tries to put Jesus up on this pedestal. Jesus was a horrible person. When all of this free miracles and stuff for the Jews, when the Gentile woman came to him begging for him to heal her child, first of all, his apostle said, Master, make her go away. Jesus' response to her as a Gentile woman was about healing her Gentile child, was that he came for the lost sheep of Israel. So healing her child would be taking food from the mouths of children and throwing it to dogs. Jesus was a garbage person. And this woman, if she is still a believer, I'm sorry. I know I'm going to speak vicariously through you. I feel for your pain. Absolutely. This might be why you want to give this shit up, because your Jesus said about this exact same situation, let the dead bury their dead. Mm-hmm. You are not supposed to grieve for those children. The book you are adhering to, the Jesus that you are complaining about, those were the red letter words in the book that you're following. If you don't like it, you might want to take that up with your God. I mean, I hate to be like that about it, but don't, if you follow religious tenets and then complain because people are doing exactly what those religious tenets said to do, that's your chosen path.
Yeah.
My day job, I teach sexual violence prevention to college students. And so I have a workshop called What You Say Matters. Mm-hmm. And one of the premises that I teach is that well-intentioned people can still say harmful things.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, you can hurt people on accident even when you mean well. Yeah. And so here's a whole list of things that you should never say. And so it reminds me of this, of the same thing when I'm teaching people, about how to respond when somebody shares that they're in a domestic violence situation. You don't say, well, why don't you just leave? Yeah. Why don't you say that? Because it doesn't take into account the fact that leaving is it's not easy for everyone to do for a plethora of reasons. What if you're undocumented? What if you don't have any financial support? What if? And also, it's the most lethal time for people in a domestic violence situation to try to leave. And also, it assumes that they didn't think about that, right? Like, it's kind of insulting.
Your first thought, I'm sure. Yeah.
Like, sorry, I didn't think about that. Maybe I'll, thank you for saving me. But the same thing, like when religious people say things like, oh, this is, he's in a better place, or this is, part of God's plan. And, it just doesn't take into account, like reality and that, or the fact that, your specific situation this isn't about logic. This is about my feelings. This is about my devastation. Yeah. Right. This is about my safety, my well-being, and focus on that instead of just trying to either like fix it or like trying to convince the person that their situation isn't that bad when the worst fucking possible thing that ever could have happened to them happened.
Right. Let's consider the perspective of her other children as well. They're sitting there. People are coming in and says, "Oh, your deceased sibling, they're in a better place," and they're going, "Wait a minute, why can't I go to a better place? Yeah. I'm here. This must be a terrible place.
Why is he chosen and not us?
I didn't get to go to Jesus."
Yeah,
that's got to mess with your mind.
Why doesn't God just dispense with all the bullshit, and instead of creating us, having us have an earthly existence, and then finally get the prize, why just dispense with the bullshit?
Yeah,
it makes no sense. Why put us here for a brief period of time and compared to all eternity anyways? Like, what's the whole point of this? If you're just going to snatch us away at various times at the most inconvenient time, and inconvenience is holding a lot of weight there, because it's inconvenient for me to lose a child. It's inconvenient to die at 95. It's all inconvenient. I don't want to die. Don't want people to lose people. But what was the whole point? To serve you? That's ridiculous. I'm so worked up with the damn video. I just was like, oh, I just want to kill everybody. I was like, this is terrible what people will say. And again, I'm going to give them a little bit of grace because they're not thinking it through. But that's the problem. You're not thinking it through. You're immediately jumping, well, Jesus solves everything. No, don't.
It's another example of how religion poisons everything.
Yeah, that's a Hitchens thing.
Yes. And to what Larry was saying, those poor children, those poor survivors.
Left behind.
What are
left
they
behind.
Really, Larry really touched on something important. Those kids must be so damn confused because now they're learning that this is not the place to be. Well, then why the hell am I here?
Right.
What it just proves, if you go through the process, the 1, 2, 3 process, it proves that God's a sicko. You want to know how I can prove that? Is because he says that we're going to have to deal with this section where we're all right now. And that includes the people who are going to be savagely abused. They have to endure that. That I don't have to go into any kind of detail, but just imagine all the different ways that human beings are savagely abused.
Yeah.
And then those little girls in that drawing.
Absolutely.
And that I noticed right away too, Scott, that they had them running through water.
I had not.
Yeah,
that made me even more.
Drowning is considered one of the worst types of deaths. Just drowning, period. Your lungs filling with water, and those little girls were struggling to get out of a structure that was crumbling around them, and then they were pulled along in the flood.
Right.
So they
in the
fought
dark.
against it.
In the dark.
So, and I'm not going to go on and on anymore about that, but just what kind of sick savage says that I love you, but I want you to go through that first. And now you can come and see me.
Yeah. As if it makes
Let's
me
get
appreciate
that out of the
you
way, because that's
anymore.
exactly what Christianity is telling us
That's what
that we're
asking us to
supposed to endure.
The-
And
the-
it makes me sick. It makes me sick.
The bottom line is these platitudes and prayer as well are things that the religious can do and say to make themselves feel better. And in their
That part
minds,
right
they
there.
think they're doing something for someone else.
That
The
part.
only result of it all is, oh, I feel better because I told them that Jesus loves them, or whatever the case may be. It's making themselves feel better.
Yeah.
It's
Soothing.
fulfilling, self-soothing, and it's virtue signaling, because it also makes them look good for the people around them, and it blends in with their community of thoughts and prayers. And we see how well that's been working.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to end on a happy note. I pushed that
fun.
too far to the end. I should have hit that one earlier so we had time to calm down, because I'm kind of annoyed right now. But thanks you guys for all joining into this call. This was actually so much fun because this is exactly what I was hoping it would be. We got through a bunch of questions, and we had a lot of good interaction with our viewers. But this is exactly what it was. We all have different perspectives. We came from different walks of life, and we have a different way that we see things. And this is exactly what I wanted to show people at home, to see that we're not a monolith. We have one thing in common, which is why I always say on our meetups here locally. The only thing you can expect to be in common is that we don't believe. But if you like a different baseball team, or you have a different way of raising your kids, or you have any other thing, we're 100% different. That's fine. We only can share that one common thing, right? And this gives us all that chance. And even that, we don't have the same exact perspective. But it was interesting. I really appreciate you guys all joining in on this. This was a lot of fun. I hope we can do it again in the future. You guys have any last parting words before we go?
We'll continue it at the beach in a couple of weeks.
That's right. We do have a beach.
Outstanding.
For those of you in Chicago, or if you want to drive down from Milwaukee, please do. We are having a beach get together coming up the 23rd, I think it is. It's not this weekend, but next. Not this coming, but the next one.
Where's your
again, that's our annual end of summer sort of beach party, and that we do, which has been a lot of fun. And again, we talked about this earlier. It kind of gives us a social thing, because we don't go to church and we don't have the pancake breakfast and all that kind of stuff. So this is a good way to get together, Again, anything else you guys want to say before we go, or should we wrap up?
Maybe
I think this is
pray.
a great group you got. And shall we bow our heads?
We
Should
should.
we pray?
We should.
Oh, no, we should not pray, because when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites that love to pray in the synagogues in the corner of the streets.
That's
you should
right.
go into a room and pray in private.
I can't bow my
Pray in
head
private.
because the
Amen.
glare would blind everyone.
All right. All right, guys. Well, thanks again a lot. Thanks for everybody for joining in. And for those of you watching or listening, we try to do these as frequently as we can. Make sure you check out the YouTube channel, which is Atheistville. And we also have a podcast, which is also Atheistville. And our Facebook is Atheist. I think it's atheistpodcast.com. It'll be all in the .com. Whatever. It's a Facebook thing. It's a group. It'll all be in the show notes. So check those out. We'd love to interact with you. If you guys have any questions for any one of us. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to put you guys as any of you tell me later. I know, Scott, you mentioned it. I think Annette. If you guys don't mind people asking you questions, I'll be happy to put your contact in the show notes. If it's like Instagram or wherever you want to be reached. If someone has a specific question for you, I'll put that in the show notes. So for those of you watching or listening at home, you're welcome to reach out to these individuals. They obviously don't mind talking. We've been doing it for 2 hours. So anyways, all right, guys, thanks a lot. And I will talk to you all later. Take care.
All right. Thanks for having us on, Mike.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you, Mike.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to today's show. I really hope you enjoyed it. Do me a favor and like and subscribe to the show and tell a friend. That helps us grow and it lets us keep bringing you more voices from the other side of belief. Until we talk again, be kind to one another and remember that reason and compassion go a long way.